you?
Nice to meet you. How are you?
I'm fine. We are just going online
I was
on
actually
the
hearing
live
everything.
stream. Just want to greet everybody here who is watching us on the live stream here, and I'm very, very happy to have my African friends here today to have a great talk on African culture. And now even Grace is joining in. What a pleasure. So, my dear friends, just waiting a bit for Grace, and then I would like to start with the introduction. I would like you to introduce yourself a bit, tell the people your background, where you're coming from, maybe what your tribe is, what your motive is to be here today, and then we jump in the middle of the discussion about the topic of death, which is a threatening thing for some people, and for some it's just a normal part of life. Hi, Grace. Grace, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
That's good. That's good. Happy to have you here, Grace. So just starting with the introduction. Zach, could you introduce yourself
I'm fine,
and
but
then
I'm
just
not
go
hearing
around?
you properly.
Pardon? Pardon me, Grace. What's the problem?
I think I'll change the location because of noise.
Okay. Just change. No problem.
Let me change the location because of noise.
Life just happens everywhere.
Yeah, and maybe she can
So,
mute.
Zach, in the meantime, please start introducing yourself.
Okay. Is it possible you mute Grace?
I did.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Well, thank you. I'm Zachuas Ogonji. I'm not very new on the show. I've been here. I think this is my fourth time talking about different things. It's always nice to be back and wonderful to have conversations that are largely interdisciplinary and are just discussing about life. So I'm from Kenya. I'm actually one of I'm a lawyer, and I was just telling Mary earlier that Kenya has 44 sub-tribes. So that's why I'm talking about I being lawyer. Now that we are talking about death, I will be sharing my own perspectives about death in a lawyer cultural setup. And beside that, I'm a founder of Inua Village to Global Foundation, an organization that works here in Kenya. We support access to quality education for all. We have built 3 community schools where we support kids. We do a lot of farming activities. We also handle things to do with financial inclusions for women, and we support community-based industries just to empower people locally to have an income. Besides that, I also work with Lift the Children, and I serve children who live in the institutions where I support them and capacity build the directors and the people who serve the children in those institutions. So I'm privileged to be here, and I look forward to have a wonderful conversation today.
Thank you very much. Who wants to continue? Francis?
Sure. Very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Francis Alexandria Ochieng. I come from a small town in eastern Uganda called Tororo. I am very grateful to be hosted in this show. I also work with the Inua Village to Global Foundation, one of Zach's own child that we're growing. And I have the privilege, I've had the privilege to meet with him and associate in different aspects. But majorly, I look at marketing and also focusing on data, and then more of team building and team training in terms of capacity, building the capacity for the team to be able to deliver. So that's one of the areas. I am also a student at Google Academy, Analytics Academy. So I do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So
Great.
can I take it now?
Wycliffe continues. Fine.
Yes. My name is Wycliffe Ogaga. I am a Kenyan. I come from Omudi County. Culturally, or let's say by tribe, I am a Luo. And now that we're going to talk about the role of death, in the African culture, I work at Rongo University as a lecturer. And at the same time, I head the council secretariat of the university. Over and above that, I work with some German group called Patoipa. Patoipa is a German organization that is supporting vulnerable children in Kenya. They give them better education, better livelihoods, and a hope for a better future. They have a number of projects in Kenya, in Mombasa, Nairobi, in Omudi County, Migori County, Rongo, where I live. And we are doing a very good job just to ensure that at least we can help some of those children who have been orphaned to get a better shot of life. So I am happy to be here and to share the perspectives of today. I hope we'll have a very lovely engagement today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Grace?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry for lateness. I was changing the location because of the noise we have with our service today. Thank you very much for hosting me, and I appreciate Bishop Grace Omudi from Kenya, Nemaland Queens and Kings. I'm the director there, and I work together with the director Zach through Canada, Lift the Children, and we have seen good things that the Canada is doing for us. And our children are very happy because of them. It's a good family from Canada. We thank God for them all. And also, I'm a Kissy. I come from Kissy County, but I'm residing in Nairobi, and I'm working in Nairobi. I'm working for the children who are desperate, children who are orphaned, and children who are rejected and abandoned. And I thank God for that. God has posted me here to work for him. Thank you so much. And thank you for seeing you today also.
Okay, thank you very much. So I learned today that Kenya has 44 tribes, and each tribe has a different approach to the role of death. Does somebody want to start about his own tribe and tell us a bit? Because actually, I don't know anything, and I want to learn. And so
you don't know. Yes, you don't know. As from Kissy, I can speak some points about Kissy and the deaths. Actually, even recently I lost my sister, and even now he has not gone from my memory. The sister I loved so much, but you know, nowadays people are Christians, but I want to speak traditionally and the culture of Kissy custom. When a man, maybe a man is a polygamist, and the man is dead, what Kissy do? They bury this man where the first wife is. They don't bury him, the second wife or the third wife. That is the law or the custom of Kissy.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, when this man is being, when they take him out from the house, because when they bring him in the house, they just place him in a reception room overnight, and they bless him from the left side. And when in the morning, when the grave is ready, this man was being taken out from the left door, because now he has gone. He's not going to be alive again. Everything is being done in left side. So that is the Kissy custom. And when a man or a woman, maybe a lady who is dead, not married, this lady will not be buried near the home. They will bury him along the boundary of the land. And also, if a man can die without children and wife, also this man can be buried outside the gates, because this man has no family, has no children, and has he has no generation. And that's what they do. They bury him outside the gates. Also, even the women who are not married, they're being buried like that. And another thing I see in Kissy custom, if a man dies and maybe they were not together with the children and the wife, maybe there was a divorce or there was separation. If a man dies, a man is dead, now they have to look for this woman to come back and bury him. If the woman cannot come back, maybe children can come back. If children can come back, these children will represent him that he was married, but the wife is not there. Now the children are there. Now the generation will continue. Those are some of the points I know about Kissy culture for the dead.
Yeah. So this is very interesting to me. So you make a differentiation about the sides for those who are alive and those who are dead?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, those who don't continue the generation, they are placed outside, like the forgotten ones. Is this right?
Yeah, they will be forgotten ones. But there is also another thing. If the parents we want to, for this generation to continue, but also it means how this person died, how he died. Maybe it was a person who was not near the family, a person who ran away from the family and went far away. That one they cannot bother. But there is those one who just can die for maybe for sicknesses, and they are grown-ups, they were not yet married. What they do, they marry a woman for the grave.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
They just bring a wife for the grave, and that one must be there and be inherited by a brother or someone closer to the family, and then the generation will continue.
Yes. So thank you very much. I pick from where Grace has left. In the Luya culture, death is very painful to begin with, whether it is for a young person or for an elderly person. Death usually starts with a lot of, brings a lot of emotions, brings a lot of sadness. And sometimes the challenge is that when a young person dies, the older one feel they have made, it's a big loss. They have lost someone who will have buried them. So there is a tendency to mourn more when a younger person dies in the Luya culture. I think this is actually across board. They believe that this person died with all their potential. They never lived to, fulfill their potential. So you will find that their funeral and the ceremony around their death will be more somber. People will mourn. People will be very sad, because generally in African context and even in Kenya here, children are wealth for the society. Children bring a lot of wealth to the society, to the community, to their families. So when they die younger, there is a lot of sadness, and lawyers spend a lot of time trying to take care that the children don't die at an early age. They want them to live to fruition. They don't want death to come to the younger ones, as much as they don't want death to come to the older ones. But when an elderly person dies, there is a mixture of emotions, especially if this person has lived a fulfilling life. They served their community well. They did a lot of wonderful things. There is sadness that they have gone. You can tell, especially from the close family members, they will cry. They will think about the wonderful moments they had with this person. There will be a lot of sadness, but equally there is celebration. Celebration in the sense that this person lived well. We can emulate him. You know, he or she did wonderful things. The spirit will live with us forever through the wonderful things they did. But also a wonderful, what I find to be a very unique twist is if both in both scenarios, whether an elderly person die or a younger person die, and they were not living a very good life. Like, for example, they were engaged in robbery or they were doing bad things. And it was known, it was public knowledge. Even maybe in some instances, they got shot by the police or they died in their criminal behavior. When it comes to the actual funeral, despite the cultural underpinnings that will happen, during the speeches that are given in the funeral, people are very careful not to say this person died a bad death, he was a bad example. They will always try to tap into the good. They will always spend time talking about the good things that this person did rather than the bad things, because they believe that he is gone and God is the one who is going to judge that person. Who are we to vilify him? And also sometimes this kind of reaction comes from a place of keeping dignity for the dead. They say that we must give him a dignified burial. So there is no need for us to shame him. He has shamed himself when he was alive, and this is the last moment. So we need to give him a dignified burial. And sometimes they just end up, trying to not say so many bad things that he did, and just let the dead to, go peacefully. So they tried their level best in that way. So there is a lot of things that happen in the Luya funeral, just like Grace has mentioned in the Kissy cultures. Here it will be either if it is a lady who was never married, where will she be buried? The specific undertakings that will happen to guide the burial. If it was a man who never had a wife and a family, there are customs that will be undertaken as they get buried. And a lot of these things are guided by elderly people, old people who know the cultures very well. And sometimes if you are in the funeral and you don't pay close attention, you will not be able to notice some of those, because they are very I don't say they're not explicit, like you won't see them. They are implicit in nature. You will, until you ask why are you doing this, they will not explain to you, or you will not know why. So when you're in the funeral, and the best thing you want to learn here is to ask questions. So why are you doing this and not that? And then you'll get a lot of elderly people explaining.
So in your culture as well.
All right, thank you.
The knowledge is within the elder people.
Thank you.
Yes, a lot of that.
Yes, maybe I can add up on what Zachuas has added.
Yes, please.
Maybe I can just top up on what Zachuas has talked about. In the Ugandan setting, in this case, we celebrate life in 3 phases. That is when a child is born, we celebrate that. When the child grows and matures, we celebrate the marriage aspect ceremony. And then also we do celebrate the death. But just to add more, some of these things have a little bit similar, with the Luyas in Kenya, and also by tribe, I'm a Jaluo in Uganda, but also I've had, we are diverse in a way that we have almost similar practices. Now, in most cases, I have seen in my own tribe, when somebody dies at an early age, yes, there is a lot of mourning, but I've seen some practices becoming a little bit different. Especially when somebody dies, we have to keep them on the sitting room or the lounge room for like 3 nights. Then they are buried on the 4th day. And you see, during that period, if the person is grown up, or is a mature person, the life is well separated. But even when the person dies when he's young, just like Zach has said, we still do have a lot of mourning. But what is all these things is that as much as there will be a lot of conversations, a lot of things defining this kind of person's life, we believe that the African death alone in itself, the spirit does not die. It is just a transition into the next world, in the next spiritual world. And so even as this person has gone, what we have last is the corpse, but then this person's spirit still exists. That's what we believe in. And burial in itself in our context is something which must. In fact, if I die and I'm not buried in a proper way, there are high chances that my community believes that my spirit will never be a settled spirit. And in this, they will always come back, and then they can speak through somebody else, in whom maybe if a child is named after me, then that child will become my speaker. In that case, I'm a spirit body, and I don't have the ability to talk, but then I can have this child speak exactly what my mind. So you see, in such aspect, which is something which is not the end of life, we look at it as just a transition into the next world. But in terms of culture, the ritual aspect which we have to do, for example, before somebody is buried, all their children have to be shaved, all the hair has to be shaved, plain, like as part of the culture. And then there is a specific kind of dressing code that the children or the relatives of the late then dress that identifies them. So even when you attend the burial, you can just know that, oh, this person is related to the late. So that kind of dress code. And then there is the shower process where the body is cleansed using some African herbs, as those are all mechanisms to make sure that the spirit is harmonized. So even if the person lived a very bad life, but the last ritual which the body is first cleaned up, and then last cleans up before it's put in the coffin. It also helps to remove the omen. So you see that such practices are highly believed to so much in my community. And that's why you see it is by divine. In fact, so many times I've seen that it is almost impossible to see that somebody has died and not buried at home. And burying at home, in fact, in the Ugandan setting, since my child up to now, I think the number of cemeteries I've seen in the country it's very small. Honestly speaking, we are not people who bury so much into the cemetery, because we believe people need to be buried in their ancestral land. And whenever I die, even when I die in the States, we have seen efforts of families making efforts to bring the body home, because we believe that the person who has passed on, we cannot allow that to stay outside. So in that case, every family designates.
Francis, may I interrupt you? The line is very broken and you're very hard to understand. Maybe you could use a microphone or headset, because it's really hard to understand. And what you're telling is very interesting, because it's very, some things just remember me of European culture, such as having people set up for 3 days before the burial and so on. And I would like to learn more, and I would really like to understand you. Do you have a headset around?
Okay.
Yeah, no. or change position.
Closer.
Or get closer to the water or whatever.
Yes. Is that better?
It's not really better. It's very broken. I don't know whether it's about the internet.
Sorry, I take over.
Yeah, it could be connectivity, internet, or something like that.
Yes.
Maybe we could take a few input as Ochieng is setting up and maybe working on his internet. We can add in some thoughts from my end. I don't know if that's okay.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes.
Add in something, and Francis, in the meantime, can check his internet.
Sure. Once again, let me greet everyone in this forum, those who are following us online. And let me add my voice to the discussions of the day. But even before I do that, I want us to remind ourselves what topic of discussion we are having today: the role of death in African culture. And for me, I would choose to address myself to that. And maybe later on, I will probably give you just some insight on how the Luo culture really, undertake or handle issues death. In the African culture, we believe that death is not the end of life. Let's begin with that. That life never, stops at death. And what it means is that there is continuity. We want to believe that people don't just die, and get forgotten. But again, also, just the fact that you are contemplating death is almost close to a taboo, especially, in the African culture. You do not want to imagine that you're going to lose your loved ones, that, you're thinking issues death about family, friends, or community members. It's like it's a taboo kind of topic. But we live with death amongst our communities, in our cultures. And it's one thing that people have come to appreciate in different ways. To begin with, Mary, let me say that, as I mentioned, we believe that when somebody dies, this person never, just lives, go off forever. There is continuity, and that is why we call them ancestors in African culture. A number of times, the way the Africans used to conduct their prayers, we would appeal to our ancestors for support, especially when there was some misery, especially when there was some disaster. The community will come together and even make offerings to ancestors, an intercession for the ancestors to really help. It's an appreciation that Grace could mute. Big Grace could mute. Yeah, it's an appreciation that people just don't die and get forgotten. They are always there with us. Another way is that there is the naming ceremony where you will find children who are born are being named after people who have died. The reason why this is happening is, to keep the legacy, and the memories of the dead with you through the living. And it is so funny that it's expected that one way or the other, this person who is named after the dead would more or less, epitomize the characters of the dead person. And it's a belief that the dead person's spirit will be able to guide this child who's been named after the dead. So every time you see this child, you relate and you remember the person who's gone, before you. Why do people, conduct a lot of these death ceremonies in Africa? Is also a major question that we need to consider. Number one, we would want to ensure, I've heard Zach, Ochieng, and Grace say how their various cultures, do bury their dead. But the question is, why, first of all, the burial? Why the decency? Why the, a lot of attention is given to accord the dead last respect? The concept of rest in peace is a concept that is being practiced when we bury our dead. You want to ensure that these people are given a better send-off so that, their spirits do not come back and haunt us. And as you do that, you want to make sure you don't want to annoy the dead because you're not sure what they're going to come back and do in their afterlife. So you want to make sure that the dead is given a very decent burial, you know. And you heard Zach say that we always say the good about them. You don't want to say this person was a thief, this person was this and that. I mean, we don't want to annoy these people as we send them off. They might come back and, you know, just destroy everything else. So you want these guys to, you know, rest in peace. You want to bury them with all their goodness, with all their badness, but again, just to give them a moment to relax, you know, to, you know, just look at the good memories that you had when this person was alive and everything else. But again, the concept of resting in peace is helping the society to remain, you know, some level of acceptance, to accept the fact that someone is gone from amidst them. And you want to preserve the spirits of the dead soul so that they don't come back and haunt a generation. So I think let's continue discussing this so that we address ourselves to really why do we value the issue of sending off our dead ones in a befitting manner. What exactly is the role of death in the African culture? I will be able to share a little bit more as we continue with this discussion. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. And what I wanted to add in is that it is very interesting to me, this awareness about the dead ones, that they can come back if not treated well. In the
yes, and I think in case they come back, they can also come back and do something that is bad. But the reason why we emphasize that decent value is done is so to it sometimes
the family can understand you. You need to do something with a headset or better connectivity.
Yes, it's still very bad. I just wanted to pick from where Wycliffe stopped. The issue of reconciliation, the spirit of reconciliation comes up a lot when a loved one has passed on. We see that sometimes maybe when the father dies, the children were not able to see eye to eye, were not able to talk to each other, or when a grandmother passes on and the grandchildren were not able to talk eye to eye, were not able to agree on many issues. Planning for the burial of the grandmother or planning the burial of a loved one is definitely one moment that brings people together because then people have to talk together and they have to put their differences aside and have to agree on certain basic things to ensure that the dead receives a decent burial. So we oftentimes in the Luya culture, I see when there is death, it is a moment for people to come together. It's a moment for people to reconcile. Sometimes the reconciliation is for the purpose of the funeral. And when the funeral is done and the funeral is gone, everybody leaves and goes back to wherever they were. And sometimes the death really brings true reconciliation, that when the loved one is gone, people stay together, stay more united, people look at each other with a lot of love. So one of the things and one of the role that death plays a lot is reconciliation that I have seen in the Luya culture, that families that are fragmented, disagree on many issues, all of a sudden during the 3 days or the 4 days of mourning, or now with the morgue and the possibility that the corpse can stay longer, the 2 weeks of waiting for the burial day brings a lot of reconciliation. Another role that I see that is closely related to that one is the unity that comes with the during that mourning period when someone has died. This is when people travel from far and wide, relatives come together and unite to send off their died one, the departed person. So you will find that there is a lot of, like I personally, I enjoy attending Luya funerals, especially those of our relatives, because it's where I will know that this is my cousin of that cousin, this one was born here, and this one, you relate with this one this way. So you'll find a lot of people coming together from very different backgrounds. At time for mourning, there is no rich, there is no poor, there is everybody together, and everybody looking forward to give and to be part of the ceremony of sending their loved one to be with the Lord or to be in the ancestral world. So, and then lastly, just to allow others to come in and share their thoughts, is the issue of, as they come together to build this unity, there is a lot of exchange of ideas, exchange of values. This is when the old teach the young ones, and the young ones learn from the old. The women play their roles, and the men play their roles, and everybody in the society is brought together by death to do their role. So if you attend a typical funeral, you'll find the roles of women are emphasized, the roles of men are emphasized, the role of children are emphasized. So you now understand your place in the society as a young man. For example, if in a Luya kind of setup, they will expect that with my age, I should be active in making a grave, being part of the team that is digging the grave to bury the dead. As part of my contribution, I don't expect to be paid to dig a grave. That is my responsibility as a young person in the society. And these roles tend to be emphasized during the funeral. The women will know that it is their role, for example, to cook and to serve the people who are coming, the visitors who are coming in the funeral. And the men will understand that it is their responsibility to guard the culture of the community, the culture of the place. They will be sitting and looking and seeing that everything is being done in the right way. So it's a moment of really of not just looking back, but also bringing the past into the present and helping push that culture into the even greater future by exchanging of these values. So quickly, I think as Ogaga has mentioned, those will be the roles that I quickly see that death plays significantly in the African society.
I have a question here. Is it equally important for your culture that the person who dies is in peace, and if has the possibility, lives up the last days to make peace with everybody?
Exactly. Yes, that is actually an almost foregone conclusion, especially when this person has been sick for a while, or have been sick for a while, or is aged. They will spend a lot of time building peace. And there is one funny thing in the Luya culture, when someone was there is magic here, and there is witchcraft, and there is all those. So if someone did bad things as a witch person or a magician, and did something that hurt others, this is the moment of confession. It's the moment of calling those people and saying I'm sorry, or mentioning their names, that I did this to this person, I seek their forgiveness. And eventually they want peace. They want to rest in peace. They want that if they go, they are forgiven. So there is a moment of like reflection and asking for forgiveness. But also, even for the living, they really want the person who is departed to go in peace. And that's why I said in the beginning that they will really shy away from anything that brings controversy, anything that brings conflict, anything that brings turmoil. They will really shy away during that moment of mourning, that moment of the funeral. And even when I'm talking about the unity and the coming together, it is the aspect that they come together, they put aside their differences, because they just want to give the departed person a decent burial. They want to give them a more fulfilling send off, but they just want they want that person to rest in peace. And there is a joke that we say here that they'll buy you the best suit when you are dead, but when you are alive, they won't bother. They will not visit, but when you are dead, they will do their best.
Yes, yes, yes. This
Let
is
me add something.
scenery in many cultures.
Just to what Zach is saying, Marianne. You know, the reason why we'll buy you the best suit when you're is just to make sure that you go in peace and your spirit does not come back to haunt the living. You know, it's like you're being enticed to just go well and go in peace. But again, let me say that the concept you're bringing about reconciliation, that is important, that before somebody really dies, normally what has happened before is that if it was known that somebody was in some kind of quarrel with another person before they die, people who are close to these persons will always want to bring them together so that at least they can have a reconciliation and then some level of forgiveness, so that this dead person does not carry with him or her, the burden of the quarrels and the disagreement that you might have with the living. And it's always important that a number of times you see that you could have a lot of beef, a lot of quarrel with someone, but then you say, well, at their deathbed, you say, I forgive you, and we can move on. It's a concept that is being practiced a lot. Something else that we need to say, and Zach alluded to it, is the unifying factor of death as a role in the African culture. Death normally unifies communities. What would happen is that whenever you lose someone, whenever someone dies, the African communities will always come together, make a contribution in money, in labor, in support, so that you can give a decent burial to the departed soul. What would happen is that the bereaving family will get a lot of support from, their communities, their relatives, and a lot of other people who are friends, to just come in and make a contribution. People work together, it's like a communal engagement where people really come together. That is when you appreciate the beauty of humanity at its best, where you see, people who come to mourn with you, people who come to console you, and just to give you not just the financial support, but also the moral and the emotional support that also comes with it. It plays so well in most of the rituals that we perform related to death, whether it's in the burial or after burial and things like that. So that unity that comes with it is quite important, and we must be able to acknowledge that that is one of the roles of death in the African culture. It reminds the people that no matter where you are, where you work, people work in different other places. Most of the time, you're not at home and everything else. Death will become some kind of, an equalizer. People will come back home, and you remember that you have a village, you have a home to go to, you have your people who are always going to be there with you and to support you. So just wanted to add that as we continue.
Yes, so it's not only about transience, but it's about unity and community.
Correct.
Okay. So Francis wanted to add something in. Let's hear, Francis, whether we can hear you now with the video off.
Okay, thank you. I have gotten the earphones. I hope I'm clear, though the network is not supporting the video.
Yes?
Yes, that's better.
Not clearer now.
Okay.
Clearer now.
So in our case scenario, after the burial process, there is, in every family, there is a particular position within a compound or within section of the home that the family gathers to discuss their traditional aspects of life. And in this, for example, you can have one big tree that is always designed as a position where people can always, the family can have a meeting. And in that place, if there is a need to invite the ancestors, in this case, the gone spirits, then the leader or the heir in that family will do everything that it takes to be able to call the spirit of the dead, and then they can come back and speak.
Hey.
And yes, and they come back and speak and tell what they want. And if they are happy, many families, in fact, up to date, many families strongly believe that most of the ancestral wealth and riches are kept through maintaining the ancestors in a proper aspect. This means that we take care of them. This means that we do ritual that they require us to do. and they bless families. So we don't just look at them in the bad aspect, but we look at them as sources of ancestral blessings that brings in wealth and maintains wealth in homes. That when you do investments, they will make sure that the ancestors will take charge. They will make sure that that wealth stays in that family for a longer time than the anticipated time. So those are some of the things that I felt maybe I needed to add on.
This is a very interesting aspect, because we have a psychologist. Let me mute you. We have a psychologist in Germany whose work was that if you don't have peace within the ancestors and the ancestor line, people in the present can get ill. That was his main concept, that the energies of the ancestors, if there is no peace or still things to be said, they will express themselves in the living. And his concept was some kind of family system, and having, as well as you have, talk the ancestors through other people or express their feelings through other people. And it was a very healing experience for many people to do that, but not normal in the European culture. And as I see now in the African culture, this concept is still much more alive.
Yes, exactly. Because here people do a lot of things, and you will even hear after many years of burying someone having been buried, you will still hear someone saying, so and so brought me dreams. This is what he says the family should do, or this is what they said, or they showed me this. There is a lot of, some extent, us who are modern will start to think that is superstition or that is not true. But for the people who are the custodian of the culture, believes and takes these things very, very seriously. So the knowledge that is cultivated around death, the amount of information and knowledge that is generated around death in itself is very significant to shape how families become and what families believe in and how they live their lives and what they go on to become. So you will find, even for us who live in the cities and those who are disconnected from our cultural roots back in the villages, whenever we have an opportunity to visit once in a while, we will be taught about these things. They will take time to teach us about these things. And I think death in itself, until it has occurred, maybe closely or within your family, you will not have an opportunity to learn this much. But when it occurs and your father has died, your mother has died, or your brother has died, or your sister has died, or one of the cousins, someone who is very close to you, you will find that there are a lot of things that you have been living in ignorance about. Things that, for example, you will come and say, oh, I'm a religious person, I don't believe in that, but they will tell you this one has been practiced since time immemorial, and there is no way we are abandoning that because you are a religious person. And many times people have gone on to live with the consequences of ignoring such cultural practices, either by being alienated from the community or people looking down upon you because then you let go the cultures and the beliefs of your people. So there is a way that the society punishes you for walking away from that. But the point I'm making is death is really a source of knowledge, a source of information, a source of deeply rooted underpinnings that sometimes we cannot know them until death happens in our immediate families.
Yes, there are possibilities that you are very close to death and then you come back to health, such as having a heart attack, having a stroke, having a major accident, being poisoned by a very poisonous animal. How is this treated in your culture? People who have been very, very close to death might have seen the other side and then come back.
Do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah.
Or I let someone else go? Yes. So I think
Wants to talk.
yes. When an accident happens and someone came to near death, and someone faced a situation of life and death, it's always a time for people to, like use that person as a testimony that, what we believe in, there is power beyond us, the power that brought this person back to life. They believe things like there is a purpose you were supposed to fulfill. That's why you've not gone. That's why God spared you. So, for example, an accident will happen and everybody will die and you will remain alive. People will say, "Why you? Why did you remain alive? What power made you to remain alive?" And this has a very strong cultural underpinning in an African society, that there is a purpose, there is a reason as to why you were left, there is a purpose as to why you continue to live. You had a heart attack, but you didn't die. But in another flip side of it, if I try to take my life and I didn't die, before even I get arrested under the penal code in Kenya, and my father finds me, he will beat me to death. I think himself. They will punish you if you try to kill yourself. I remember there was an instance where my aunt hanged herself, but she didn't die. She hanged herself using a wrap. She wanted to die because of depression and a lot of life pressures. And I remember when we went there to see her, and she was lying on the floor, very helpless. And I was with my mom. I was a bit younger then. When we arrived there, the first thing my mom did was to slap her several times. Like there's a word they use it here in Luya, but the concept behind that is, why are you taking life and you are not? You don't have power to do that. Even if you live the worst of the worst, you don't have power to take your own life, and they'll take it very seriously. So you will see that instant death that happen out of not diseases, but come out of accidents or such like things, really cause more pain. People really mourn because they were not prepared for something like this. But they don't anticipate a situation where you take your own life. The whole society will frown upon someone taking your life. So assuming you did it and it was successful, you hanged yourself and you died, the way they conduct your funeral is very different. They will do very different rituals from someone who died a normal death, and that is just to emphasize and teach the generation that no matter what, you are not allowed to take your life. For example, if someone hanged themselves and they died in the process, in the Luya culture, this person, they will be buried in the midst of the night, dark night. Nobody will know. They'll not even raise their grave. They will not mark the grave. They will want this person to be forgotten. They will want the worst of the things not to be remembered. So this is the lesson to us, and it emphasizes that we shouldn't take life lightly. We shouldn't just take it for granted. And no matter what pressures we are going through, no matter how difficult the situation is, death is not the solution. So those are some of the things that come from that.
So suicidal acts are treated very severely.
Very cruel. I don't know about the other cultures, but maybe Ogaga can share with us and Francis on their thoughts.
Yes, please.
Sorry, yeah, just as Zach is saying, we do not encourage, especially in the African culture, a person to take his or her own life, and whenever that happens, even the way the rituals are performed on this person, the after death rituals are performed is very different. We want to believe that anybody who takes his or her own life, is not given accorded the same respect as he or she will be accorded when this person died naturally. There is always, that variance. You're like seen as a disappointment to a community and a bad example to the people who are left behind. So, there is also that level of, you're also not accorded the very level of respect that should have been accorded if you were to die naturally. So that happens. But I just wanted to add something else. One of the roles of death in the African culture is also an opportunity to let people discover the cause of death, and if possible, try to see how it can, a community can avert any such misfortunes again. In the African culture, we believe that people just don't die without any cause. Many a times it could be maybe at the hands of someone else. What Zach is saying, substitution. People believe that if you die, then maybe someone else really is after your life. Somebody else doesn't want good for you, or things like that. We always have a reason to explain death, no matter really whether it's just normal disease or even just accident. You would see somebody die in a road accident, but then people want to, find explanation in terms of they had a disagreement with a neighbor or a member of the community, and so this person brought the death of, it's very funny. But it's important for us to understand that when somebody dies, it gives the community an opportunity to find out what will be the cause of this particular death, and if possible, find a way to avert such kind of eventualities from happening in future. So I think that is also very key to really understand as one of the issues that happen in the African culture. And again, just as I mentioned earlier, we perform a lot of rituals upon death, starting from issues to do with burial. The reason why these ones are done is that we do not want somebody to have, the spirit of the dead to be a wandering ghost. And that is why you want to contain them as much as possible in a very befitting way, so that that spirit does not become a wandering ghost. The issue is that when it becomes a wandering ghost, then it can also have with it detrimental effects on the lives of people who are still alive. It's like you would come back, you would haunt a community, it's like you're not settled. I remember Zach mentioned something about connecting with the dead through dream. These things, they are so, it's difficult to explain really how it happens, but a number of times we have had so many people say, you had some instructions from your dead relative or anything else who is telling you to do this and that, do this and that. And many a times, as that happens, there is that level of connection between the dead and the living in a very, very special way. Another very interesting one is that at the time when a young one is born, in my culture, for example, when a young one is born, during that time of naming, you would see that as you want to settle on a name for a newborn child, there's a period where the child will cry so much, and the parents will be calling out names of the ancestors, people who have gone before, whether they are grandmothers who died, grandfathers who died, aunties, uncles, and whatnot. So they will be calling name after name after name as the child cries, And then at the time when the dead person who wanted probably to be named after this child, when you mention the name of that particular person, this child stops crying. So in a way, it's like the spirits, the dead are sending a spirit that I want to be named after a particular child. So those are the kind of funny thing that normally happens. And we have learned that a number of times, when you call out the name of the particular, maybe your favorite auntie, blah, blah, who wanted to, to continue with that kind of naming ceremony, then all of a sudden the child stops crying and she smiles or he smiles, and life continues. And that person now, that child now assumes that particular name. So there is always, that belief that there is connectedness between the souls, both of the living and the dead. And you get that in a number of ways. It can come in the dream world. It can come through events like the naming ceremonies and whatnot. It is important just we acknowledge that death still plays a very special role in the lives of both the living and the dead, because of those connectedness going forward. So let's continue the discussion.
Yes, this is a very, very interesting topic. I just remember a meditation I did one time. It was a very deep meditation. And suddenly it was just like a man I never met before was standing in front of me. And I was asking, "Who are you?" And he said, "Well, I am your great great grandfather." And I said, "Great great grandfather, father, nice to have you here. Is there anything you need, anything to put your soul to peace?" And he said, "No, I only came to tell you you're not alone." And that was the moment when I started crying for about half an hour, I think. Just his warm energy telling me I'm not alone. He's watching over me.
Yes,
Forgot.
and yeah, I see Francis Ochieng, Francis' hand has been up for a while. Francis, do you want to
Yes,
go before?
Francis, please talk.
Okay, thank you. I would like to respond to your question. The one that you asked, that in situations where somebody almost goes half dead or is dead and comes back to life, what happens? In my community, we look at two different aspects. There is that abrupt death that then somebody comes back to life, but then there is a situation of suicide case. Now, in situations where somebody dies and then they come back to life, in my community and many of the other surrounding communities that I do know, 85% of such cases, when they return back to life, have never talked. There is that aspect that the ancestors do not allow them to to talk what they have seen the other side of the veil. And with us, in that aspect, oftentimes the community or the family specifically sits to see to it that the message which can be passed, how to get the message from this person. And in this aspect, if they can write, then they still have the memory and they can write, though they cannot be able to talk. So the ancestors make them mute, but then they can write. And then if any of the family members can go into the process of translation to try and understand a few things that this person saw the other side. But also we don't dig so much into that, because then there are high chances that the more you keep digging deeper into that aspect, this person that became dumb or mute is soon going to die. Because the whole idea why they are not talking is not to be able to release the information that they saw and perhaps they collected from the other side of the veil. Now, in situations where they die through suicide, maybe they hang themselves. Yes, it is heavily punished, even in my community. In fact, if you hang yourself in the middle of your house, inside the house, what we'll do is we will dig a grave right straight to where you hang yourself. And then you will be given, if you're a man, you will be given 15 whips. And if you're a woman, you will be given 10 for hanging yourself. And then they will cut the rope, you fall in the grave, and we bury you at 3 a.m. in the morning. So you see, that is quite tough. Because we believe you don't have the right to take that life. In fact, you didn't give yourself that life. The ancestors gave you the privilege to have that life. So you're actually not very grateful by taking it by yourself. So you see such situations, my community translates it into something that is treated severely, but also teaching the lesson to many other people that are around and alive. So that is my contribution in terms of responding to that question that you had asked.
Francis, I have a question to you. It is, for myself, it's very severe. You hang yourself in the house, you're very sad and not at peace at the moment. Then you are just fall in a grave. And how do the people continue living in that house? Are they not haunted by that spirit?
Now, that house is thereafter is abandoned, and it will stay for some time as they continue to do the last remaining ritual for everyone who dies. And then after that last ritual, there is that last party that we do. And there is some rituals that are done to make sure that the spirit is set free and does not hunt the people who are left behind. So in this aspect, that house will stay there until that last ritual is done. But after the ritual is done, the house is set on fire.
Okay. I just wondered about that. So it's a very severe thing to the person itself and to the family.
Yes, yes.
Here, a long time it was a custom that if you kill yourself, you're not buried in the cemetery of the village. You're just put aside somewhere.
Yeah, so then that shows that in some way, even though today we have a lot of suicide cases, people taking their lives because of different things. Even here, there are still continuing instances where a man has killed his wife and killed himself, even when it is announced in the television, and no matter what the reason is, and no matter how it might look like that is modern thing, when they go back to be buried after government has done the postmortems and all the investigations are done, they will still face the same situation, because the community just wants to communicate that this is not the way to deal with things. Death is never a solution, especially death that you invite to yourself, hoping that you have solved the problems. But also, there is another aspect that I talked about earlier in terms of unity. And this is not just about a specific community or a specific small part of the country. I have seen when leaders die, like in the African society, especially leaders who have been either big church leaders or religious leaders or politicians or people of significance in the society, that they declare a period of mourning. I think this is exercised across, and it's the same thing that we see, and everybody, including those people who didn't agree with this person when they were alive, sort of want to respect for what he stood for, wants to understand and wants to reflect the values and the things that this person lived for. So I see the death aspect and the role it plays in our societies, much of sending us back to who we are as human beings, beside the law, beside the modernization, beside the modern cultures that we get ourselves in. Death has a way of bringing us back to who we are as human beings. The sensibility that a family has lost their loved one or something difficult has happened, and in an African setup and in a Kenyan setup and in my Luya community, like I said earlier on, you are a breadwinner, you are a source of livelihood, you've been supporting people, have been depending on you, and all of a sudden you are gone. That means so much. It means the kids who are attending school can no longer attend school. The kids who used to have someone to take them out probably don't have that. So a lot of mourning happens in realization of that we will no longer have this person to do the things that they used to do. People will cry because you used to understand them better and you used to know them better, and they will not have someone who understands them that close the way you used to do. So this ability for individuals to reflect on what life is, on who we are as human beings, I think death in many occasions have an opportunity to shape how we live our lives in a way that we want to be useful. We want to help others. We want to live for something, because the question is, when you are dead, how many people will mourn? How many people will cry that you've left, or people will feel nothing. People will feel nothing that you died. People will not even realize that you left. So I think that emotional and that intuitive feeling that people feel, the gap that you leave behind is very significant, even in shaping the lives of those people who are still alive.
Yes, I think that at least the last third of your life should be dedicated on your purpose of life and what you leave behind.
Yes.
At least for me, that's an important thing. That you care about the last 30 years of your life, about what you want to be remembered by.
Yes, and that means the closer you move to death, the more you have to be more conscious that life is more than just the usual things we experience or do.
So we have peace, unity, dignity,
reconciliation
around death. And the clear thing that the African culture sees it as transience, just as not as something that ends.
Exactly.
That in your culture, you're very aware of what a spirit can do on the good side and the bad side. And you don't want to have wandering ghosts. It was in my culture hundreds of years ago, we were more aware. Now people tend to forget, and I don't think that is a good thing. You should be very aware that a dead person can be a wandering ghost, and that this is no good thing for nobody. Not the alive, not the dead one.
True. I wanted to bring in another very funny perspective.
Yeah.
You know, in the Western culture, and I think a lot of the culture that we've adopted, I think these days, is that people are encouraged to leave a will, so that when you die, I think people really know what you'd want done with your property or anything else that belongs to you, or just how you want to organize your family.
Mm-hmm.
But in the African culture, just the concept that you think about leaving a will is rather a taboo, because they say the fact that you're living in a will, you're contemplating death. And, the more you think about it, it may just happen. So you, so you will find people really, most of in an ideal African culture, people don't really have wills, because writing a will is a contemplation of death. And when you conceive it in your mind, it might just come over to you. People really want to fear you. It is some kind of, it's really with a lot of fear that if you were to get into the issues of, writing your will and everything else, hey, then it's like this person wants to die. People will be worried. What's wrong with you? Do you want to die? And things like that. So that's a very, very funny perspective.
So
All in
making
all,
a will is just as making a calling.
I am telling you, you're inviting them to come to your doorstep by drafting a will. So people in the African culture will treat it with a lot of disdain. Just the fact that you're contemplating having a will. It's funny.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, and that even goes hand in hand with the idea that someone dug their grave and planned where they will be buried.
Yes.
Usually such things get a lot of mention on the local media and on the local television news. They'll even get prime time spot, because that's funny. Why are you inviting death in your life? So just the way Wycliffe is saying, people don't look forward to dying. People look forward to living. People look forward to doing whatever they can. And they say, if my day has come, whether I do it or not, I'll still die. Really, if you want to fight over what I've left behind and you don't want to agree, that's your business. So you should figure out what to do after I'm gone. So I'll not plan my death. I will not plan for my funeral. Yeah, people do say wishes. There are people who say what they would like to happen or what would like to do. Like, for example, I don't have right to say I want to be cremated. when I die. Yes, I can say that, but my father, who unto him, he will say, my son must be buried here, and I want to see his grave, you know, and the community will demand that I be buried here in the community. And that's why they'll spend a lot of money to get my corpse from US to come and bury it, because it means a lot to them. It means they bring the spirit back home. So even if I became more modernized, and I decided for some reason I want to be cremated, that I don't have a last say. I don't know, Gaga, do you feel that, like, we don't have a last say what happens?
That is the truth, actually. In my culture, you don't just dictate what's going to happen to you when you die. Your community will give you the treatment that they feel best fits you. So many times, even if you leave behind some of those wishes that, you know, you'd want to be cremated, you know, you'd want to be buried in town in a cemetery, and they're not going to let that happen. According to our culture, your community will give you a decent send-off that they feel you befits you as a person. So a lot of those other things that you say might not necessarily really have a lot of credence, especially to those people who are still living when you're gone.
So on one hand, you don't need to make all those weird things because there's a community that will care. On the other hand, that community will decide.
That's the funny bit. There are a lot of those things that are maybe personal to family that you can really, you know, you can dictate. But things that are a lot more communal, you know, where you're going to be buried, how you want to be buried, most of that is being really decided in a community meeting. Especially when we lose a loved one, we normally have those community meetings that are being chaired by, you know, the community leader at that particular time. Those people will really make some of those decisions with regard to even when you're going to be buried. So sometimes even your children might want that you're being buried in another 3 days after you're dead and everything else. But those people will just say no. They want time so that at least they can prepare accordingly to send you off. So a lot of those decisions with regard to the rituals that happen after death, those decisions are really made by the community.
Yes,
a lot of
community.
it. Yes, the input of the family will always be there, but the decision really has to come from that community setup in terms of what's going to happen to you.
And maybe even a more clear example on how this plays out. For example, if a woman maybe in her 30s and she has been married and she gave birth to boys especially, and then for some reason separation happened and left her marital home and went to live somewhere else, in case of even it's a divorce, and then she dies after some time, the boys will bring her back, will bring the corpse back to bury, regardless of whether the father likes it or not. The children, the boys especially, have the right to bury their mother, and the community will stand with them, and they will go get the mother where she died and in whichever place, and they will bring her back to the community and let her be buried in the husband's compound because of the boys. And this is culturally practiced to ensure that even as women go through life, where they leave their boy children, where they give birth to their children. So when you are living through this life, there is a place where you went and gave birth to children. That's the place where you belong. That is where your grave is. And those people have responsibility to bury you. So you can't just die and then be left to rot somewhere. You belong somewhere. There are people who claim you somewhere. And when you think about the detailed arrangement of that, you see that death in itself needs the communities together, needs the families together. We haven't even talked about the underlying factors of maybe a wife was married. You gave dowry for that wife. She lived with you, gave birth to you, united the two families, for you, for the man, and for the wife. And then she has died when she's living elsewhere. you have the right, and the father of that wife will help you to bury your wife, because you did all the necessary ritual when she was alive, you know. So death in itself, just where you get buried or what happens, really have to do with what happened when you are living, you know. There were other cultures that were going on when you are living that determined what now happens in death. So it's not that they will just conclude that you should be buried here. There should be things that have been happening when you are alive, some other cultural things. So, for example, I have married my wife and I've paid dowry. That is a cultural underpinning. By paying a dowry, I'm also accepting to bury her, you know. So I cannot then come when she's dead and say, no, I will not bury her, you know. Yeah, so there are other cultural aspects of this that lead to what then happens in death and who decides what happens. So we, again, when we look at it individually, we can't just then think that death is one and alone. No, death exists in an ecosystem where there are other cultures, and these cultures then lead to what happens at what point.
That's very interesting. Francis wants to add something in. Francis?
Yes, sure. Yes, I wanted to add something to the things that Zachuas and Wycliffe have talked about. Death plays a very pivotal role. In fact, when we were talking about the idea of writing a will, you know, we believe that we are all tied to to a root, which is our ancestral roots. And when we are growing up, we are children of the community. So when we are growing up or being raised in the community, for example, in myself, I think those days when growing up, I grew up in the community. I would eat lunch anywhere that lunchtime finds me. And many children too would eat lunch at home if lunchtime finds them at home. And we were just okay with that. And you see, that kind of communal setting gives the community the power and to decide how they want to send you off. And then the measure of sending off that you deserve. But then why are they doing this? They're doing this because then we want to make sure that unity is promoted, the community remains intact, because then if you write your own will and the land belongs to your great-grandfather, who passed it to your great-grandfather, then passed it to your father, and now you want to write your own will, apportioning yourself, your portion. You see, they try to avoid all those things by making you not become selfish and greedy, to start wanting things for yourself alone, but to remember that, hey, you have a role and a responsibility to play to serve this community and make it better, and whatever potential wealth you found in it, use it, leave it for the next generation. The community will be there to decide what comes thereafter. And the other aspect that I would like to add is that death in itself brings families together. I've seen in my own community, like when my dad passed on, many of the community members gathered together to see there is that meeting that is done right after the burial. In fact, a day after the burial, the meeting takes place, and they call everyone and say, hey, if so-and-so is having a date, this is the right time for you to come. And if my dad had accumulated dates somewhere, somehow in one or the other, and it will affect the smooth running of our family, or it will affect some of the assets or the wealth that our family has, then the community comes in to help us to be able to clear some of the debts. And even if it is possible, give the opportunity to those creditors if they can forgive the late, because then the people who are behind, who are left behind, may not be the people who actually engaged with the creditor. So in this aspect, the community stands to be able to renegotiate or even give a platform which can help boost the family in that aspect.
Right.
Thank you.
It's a great aspect.
Yes, and I agree with Francis. And we have talked about the positives. There are also negative roles that death plays. And I think a little bit we mentioned that death can be a great source of separation in families and can cause severe separations and misunderstandings, because as we grow as families and as communities, people believe in different things. And during death, when someone has died, especially a significant figure like a father in the family, who could have been a person who is uniting everyone and bringing everybody together, now they are no longer there. It becomes very difficult to have people come together and agree on issues. And sometimes when death comes in the families, you find the different ideologies that have been suppressed come to the fore. You know, people who believe in this, or people who want this done that way, people who want to be their family land to be divided immediately, people who want to share the wealth that is left behind in a certain way. All those have an opportunity to come to the fore during the death and during the funeral and even after. So as much as death opens opportunities for us to learn, to unite, it can also be a very difficult moment that can bring lifelong separations within families and within community members, because then people disagree bitterly. People disagree in ways that maybe it will take another death to reconcile them, and maybe that reconciliation will never happen. I see that one of the biggest pressure today is the economics of funeral, and Ogaga will agree with me that funerals are increasingly becoming very expensive each day. They are becoming a burden to the family that have lost their loved one, because the pastors who officiate the funeral, and I wish Grace was still with us on the call, will have shared with us more about that, ask for money before they bury the dead. The people who are coming in the funeral, especially in the Luya community, they need to eat and they need to be fed, and the funeral will take 2 years. 2 weeks, just as they wait for the body in the morgue and they wait for everybody to come from wherever they are coming from. Community members are coming into the homestead and eating and being taken care of. This is the time when the biggest bull is slaughtered and a lot of celebration. And this bull could be the only one, the only source of the only asset that the family has. This is when the bananas are cut and cooked. This is when the maize are cut and cooked. There is a lot of using of the resources that are within the homestead in certain cultures, and especially in the Luya culture. And these sometimes tend to leave the family poorer than they were before the funeral occurred. So as much as we look at all the beautiful and the wonderful things that come with funeral, we have seen incidences when funerals have led to depressions, funerals have led to pressure, funerals have led to conditions to family members who are remaining behind. Immediately a funeral occurs, people become very disturbed. They don't know what is going to happen. Funeral also have a tendency of exposing your weakness. So for example, I am a young man, I live in the city, I live a certain way, my friends know me in a certain way, and then I die, and then I go in the village and I don't have a house. They have to put up a small tent for me culturally. And that brings a lot of shame to my family, brings a lot of embarrassment to my family. So when you think about death in that aspect, and when you think about, oh, this person has died, we will be exposed. We will know that the people will know that this is how we live. We are poor. We are this way. Brings a lot of distress to the living. So that's also for me the downside of funeral and death, especially in African society where they really celebrate it. But also on the other side, there is that downside.
Let me take it from what Zach is saying. And it is so funny that today, most of the insurance companies are really insuring, putting up premiums to manage funerals. We have a lot of insurance packages today that are just, they are meant to help you whenever somebody passes on. And we pay premiums every other year for that, just so that at least you can manage funerals. We say in my community, if I come and I don't eat, I would actually take offense. why I was not fed at a funeral. And you can imagine, you come to a funeral where people are really suffering and you're supposed to, you know, bring solace. But if you go to such a funeral and you don't eat, you really take a lot of offense and you will really have a lot to say that is so negative. That's the funny thing about it. I wanted to bring in another perspective with issues that, you know, I want to say that over and above everything else that we've said, the reconciliation, the unity, you know, and all that, another perspective about death and the African culture is that it will also give you an opportunity to retire suffering. You know, there will come a time when a member of a family has suffered a lot, maybe through prolonged disease, maybe things like that, until it gets to a situation where it becomes too burdensome, it becomes emotionally draining. At such points, people appreciate death as a way of retiring that level of suffering, so that, you know, you have that acceptance, say, let him die, and, you know, just rest easy. So that is also something that we can say death will do to us as a people, so that it at least gives the people who are still living, you know, to just have some sense of peace, to cease the suffering, and a lot of an opportunity to forget and just move on. That is one way. But another thing, normally death also gives the community, and not just the community, but anyone else, an opportunity and a chance to continue supporting the family of the bereaved. Some of us who are orphans, and especially also at a very young age, wouldn't have been where we were sometimes if we didn't have the support of people who came along to really just, you know, give us wings to fly in a particular way, so to say. You would realize that, and I will say with this with a lot of confidence, with a lot of emotion also, those people who are orphans of this world actually have better opportunities at life than even those who have got parents, but your parents who really cannot support you. Because everything in that comes, anybody who wants to support anyone, you know, it's easy. Who is going to come to your mind? The first person is somebody who is an orphan, no father, no mother, and things like that. And I think what also I would say, I would ascribe to the role of death is that there is that opportunity that someone is going to look at you now differently, as deserving, more deserving of help, of support, than when your parents were there, regardless whether these parents were able or not able. But the fact that now they're not there and you're left on your own, you get better opportunities, a little bit, you know, more concern from your community to give you a helping hand, and from anybody else, any well-wishers would want to, you know, support you going through. So I see that also as just one of those ways that we do not want to treat death as I know, with the sadness that comes with it, you know, the pain that comes with it of losing a loved one and all that, but there are also opportunities that come with it that we also have to appreciate going forward. And that is just one of the examples of what really we can say. So that level of support system normally will come into play. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That reminds me of that I wanted to say that Zach and I are beginning a new project. Next year, we are going to cover a lot of African topics. And for those who want to enter in that, we can say that we as well offer to learn Kiswahili as language to be able to better connect to Africa and African culture. Zach, would you like to say something about that?
Yes, thank you for this, for bringing that forward, Marianne. I think from the conversation we have had today, you can already see there is a lot of things that we share that some have happened in Europe before and they are no longer happening, or some are continuing to happen. And you can believe me that we've just scratched the surface a little bit of what is there. So there is a lot to learn, and we believe one of the ways that you can learn more deeply and understand some of the things we've shared is, for example, if you learn the language, because some of these things will be best explained in the language. And if you can connect deeply with Africa through language, understanding Swahili and probably understanding some of the local languages that we have, you could go a step further in knowing the way of life here. So that's why we are starting that program that Mariana has mentioned. And we will be having wonderful people like Wycliffe, Ogaga, Francis Ochieng, and many more, sharing a lot of perspectives, both in brief sessions like this, but also with an opportunity to engage them deeply on certain issues around Africa, and just getting to know. So like Ogaga said, he's a professional, he's working in a university, he knows a lot of things that can help you if you want to come to Africa, you want to work in Africa. You can really advise on so many things. And this is what we are looking forward to do with the platform that we are creating. You learn the language, you know how to connect with Africa on a heart-to-heart basis, that you are able to understand the people, but also you're able to connect in a very friendly way with people like Ogaga here, people like Francis, and they can be able to assist you in a very individualized way. So we are looking forward to it. We are very excited that the homepage is there already on the FutureLink website. So you can go to it, check it out, and subscribe, I think.
Yeah, that would be great. So everybody who wants to learn Kiswahili, I posted the link in the chat. You can easily subscribe there. And once we start, we will send you an offer and an invitation.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Okay, everybody, thank you very much for that talk. I would like you to just give one last statement, and then we will close for today.
Well, maybe let me start, because at least I'm having another meeting. I'm in Nairobi, having another meeting with another team actually in the next 30 minutes. I want to say that I'm grateful for this opportunity just to share our perspectives, just to learn more about, really appreciate our dead and our living. And above all else, as I mentioned about Patoipa EV, I say that Patoipa really works with, actually it's a German organization, works to support so many vulnerable children, mostly also children who have also suffered death, who have lost loved ones and have been left orphaned. They support them by giving them better opportunities for education, better livelihoods, so that at least we can make men out of boys and women out of girls in future. Hopefully, it's a program that really also appreciates that there is not always the bleak side, the dark side we see about death. There are also opportunities that you can always come and appreciate as people who continue to live on earth. I'm very grateful to them, to Patoipa board. Please feel very much appreciated for everything you do. And for every other person who really goes out of their way to support, some of these orphans and vulnerable children in our societies. We do not take it for granted. These are people we really appreciate, and we remain ever grateful to them. Thank you very much, Marianne, for this opportunity, and it's been a pleasure. I hope we can do this again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Francis, do you want to continue? Francis, it's your word.
Francis, it's your word.
Yes, thank you so very much, Marianne. For me, it's such a wonderful opportunity to be here, first of the kind. And I can see a number of things really shaping up. But also I like FutureLink I. I was really looking, when you mentioned it, I was like, I was actually looking deeper and trying to find a deeper meaning of what that name was derived from. But definitely very grateful and happy for such a name as well. That was a good selection, I must commend. But also as a young man, as a young person from Ugandan society, and also having had opportunity to visit a number of, engage and visit a number of African communities. I love engaging in a cultural aspect because it helps us dive more into our roots and be able to poke holes where there is need, and also be able to stand firm and promote what we deserve to promote as a good culture for our continent, Africa. But you're welcome, and we look forward to moments with you down in Africa here. Thank you very much, and do have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
So do I. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I really miss words to say as concluding remarks, but I really appreciate Wycliffe. I appreciate Francis for coming to this call. I know Grace sent me a message and said she's having problem with her connection. Hopefully we can hear more from her next time. She had a wonderful introduction, and we were able to learn a few things from her culture as well, and we look forward that we can engage not just Grace and many more. For me, this conversation always is an opportunity for me to, look deep into what Africa has to offer, how we live here, and who we are as the people, and what we should value and what we should be proud of. But also looking outside and realizing that as much as we live in this beautiful world with beautiful cultures, with beautiful people, friends, there is the world that is going on out there, and a lot of things are coming to us, and we should have ability to sieve and see what is good for us and what is not good for us. So I really appreciate this conversation and the opportunity we have had, and I'm grateful to all the fellow panelists, and see you next time.
Yes, see you next time, and especially next year when we will do an African topic each month.
That will be very interesting and exciting.
Yes, I think so too. So thank you, everybody. And I'm very much looking forward to the next time.
Thank you.
Bye.